Number 10. Annabella Dukes. One day in 2021, a young man left his family's Albuquerque home during the early morning hours to meet a girl from Snapchat. Little did he know, he was the target of a robbery that was about to go horribly wrong. After arriving to pick the girl up, he was yanked out of his vehicle and allegedly held at gunpoint by 4 suspects who demanded money, jewelry, and a gun. They took anything of value that they could find on him, then forced the victim back into his car and started driving to his house. Along the way, they ordered him to call his brother, 24-year-old Elias Otero, and tell him to come outside with money and a gun. If Otero didn't come outside, the carjackers said they would murder the victim. When they arrived, Otero exited the house and threatened to shoot his younger brother's kidnappers. One of the suspects pulled a gun and shot Otero, who died from his injuries. The alleged gunman, Adrian Avila, and the accused mastermind behind the plot, 18-year-old Annabella Dukes, remained on the run for nearly a year. Avila finally surrendered in late 2021, and Dukes was captured the next month. They face a laundry list of charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, and tampering with evidence. Number 9. Matthew Dylan Ramirez. In 2021, a young man named Matthew Dylan Ramirez was recruited by a human smuggling organization on Snapchat. He agreed to pick up some illegal immigrants in the Arizona desert and drive them to Phoenix for $1,000. Another man working for the smuggling ring, named Jesus Madrid Varela, guided 3 Mexican migrants on foot into Arizona, where Ramirez came and picked them up. During the drive, a Tohono O'odham Nation policeman tried to pull the vehicle over, but Ramirez was already going more than 100 miles per hour, 161 kilometers per hour, and the officer was unable to safely catch up. Ramirez lost control of the vehicle, causing it to roll multiple times. All the passengers were ejected, and a 36-year-old woman died. The other 3 passengers were injured but survived. During questioning, Ramirez admitted to working for a smuggling organization. Both Ramirez and Madrid Varela pleaded guilty in federal court to conspiracy and transportation of illegal aliens for profit, resulting in death. Ramirez faces up to life in prison and a fine of up to $250,000, while Madrid Varela signed a plea agreement and is expected to serve roughly 3 to 5 years. Number 8. Mandon Watts. After getting into a heated argument with another young man on Snapchat one day in 2022, 18-year-old Mandon Watts challenged his adversary to meet at a cemetery in Pennsylvania for a real fight. Taking a power in numbers approach, the young man recruited 6 of his friends to go with him. But when they saw Watts pointing what looked like a gun at them, they fled the scene. Watts messaged the teen on Snapchat and claimed that the weapon was just an airsoft gun and persuaded him to return to the cemetery for the planned fight. The young man and his friends piled into 2 cars and drove back to the site, where Watts waited on an ATV wearing all black and a ski mask. He guided the vehicles into the cemetery, but disappeared briefly at some point. Moments later, Watts re-emerged on the 4-wheeler. He pulled a handgun from his waistband and began shooting at the teens, who immediately fled the scene. Watts fired 5 shots total. Luckily, nobody was injured. Pennsylvania state troopers followed ATV tracks at the crime scene to a nearby house where they questioned Watts. They found a 4-wheeler parked inside a shed and a ski mask similar to the one the suspect was said to be wearing during the shooting. Watts refused to voluntarily share his Snapchat information with investigators, who obtained a warrant and discovered, based on his username, that he was the person interacting with the victims in the time leading up to the crime. He was federally charged with multiple counts each of criminal attempted homicide, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, simple assault, and reckless endangerment. Number 7. Simon Salaman. When a woman in Oxfordshire, England began chatting with Simon Salaman on Snapchat in 2021, she initially thought it seemed like they had a lot in common. They exchanged phone numbers and eventually met up, at which point the woman changed her mind and decided she didn't want to date Salaman. She told him she had a lot going on at the time and tried to end their correspondence. But Salaman refused to accept the rejection, and he began harassing the woman relentlessly. The day after Valentine's Day in 2022, he called her 350 times. He showed up at her apartment complex the next day and told her that he wasn't going to leave unless she agreed to speak with him later that day. The victim threatened to call the police, but it failed to deter Salaman from continuing to torment her. He messaged her constantly and grew increasingly angry the more she ignored him. A judge granted an order of protection and set a return court date for Salaman. He failed to attend, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. Salaman pleaded guilty to stalking and was still awaiting sentencing at the last update. Number 6. Mariah Lopez. A San Antonio woman in her 70s endured hours of horrific abuse one day in June of 2022 when a relative attacked her in her bedroom and broadcasted the assault on Snapchat. The family member blamed the elderly victim for animal control taking their dogs away and accused her of owing them money. They poured a bottle of water over her head and pushed her cane up against her neck. When the senior citizen tried to leave the room, the suspect stopped her and ordered her into a bathroom, where they held her for at least an hour and a half. The campaign of terror continued when the suspect sent the victim into the living room, where they dumped more water on her head, threatened her, and pushed and slapped her with a knife in their hand. Someone who witnessed the attacker's Snapchat videos alerted a relative of the victim, who recognized the suspect in the footage as 31-year-old Mariah Lopez. Before rushing over there, the relative called Lopez, who said that the elderly woman was sleeping. By the time the family member arrived, Lopez was gone, and the victim's purse and phone were missing. Authorities charged Lopez with injury to the elderly, unlawful restraint, terroristic threat of a family member, and theft between $750 and $2,500. Number 5. Kobe Malik Woods. In early 2021, authorities in Smith County, Virginia, noticed an unusually large amount of illegal pills flooding into the area. An investigation ensued and a number of suspects were identified, but one of the biggest breaks came when law enforcement intercepted a package from California containing 800 fentanyl pills addressed to 19-year-old Kobe Malik Woods. It was a troubling discovery, especially in a region that has been especially hard hit during the ongoing opioid epidemic. Detectives performed a controlled delivery at the recipient's home, which, in this case, meant that the postal carrier delivered the parcel as usual, while the feds remained staked out nearby. After seeing someone take the package inside, agents approached the home armed with a search warrant. Woods allegedly tried to flee with the package in hand, but was quickly captured near his home. The investigation found that he had ordered the pills on Snapchat. At a time when fentanyl is ruining and claiming lives across the US, the seizure marked another win in law enforcement's relentless fight against deadly narcotics. Woods pleaded guilty to possession with the intent to distribute more than 40 grams of fentanyl and received a 3.5-year prison sentence. Number 4. William Underwood. In 2019, a young Texas man named William Underwood was about to enter his senior year of high school when he instead landed himself in a jail cell. It all started when the teen met up with 19-year-old Ryan Bates outside an apartment complex in Harris County, supposedly to buy some marijuana. A witness would later report seeing Underwood tasing Bates, then getting into his car. She heard gunshots just moments later, and Bates was dead. Shortly after the shooting, Underwood made a Snapchat video at the murder scene. During questioning, he told detectives a few different stories about what happened. According to one version, Underwood thought that Bates was about to rob him, so he tased the victim and then shot him. He then got rid of his clothes and made a Snapchat post. He was soon charged with murder. The prosecutor accused him of trying to establish an alibi by going to his sister's apartment and using Snapchat there, hoping that it would make it look like he never left the house. But plenty of people had already seen the video, putting him at the crime scene. Underwood's lawyer claimed that his client shot Bates in self-defense and was extremely upset about the situation. The victim's father, on the other hand, told ABC News that the two young men didn't know each other and that he believed Underwood randomly targeted his son. Number 3. Christopher Cowan. Starting in 2020, 6 Scottish women were harassed incessantly on Snapchat by a man named Christopher Cowan, who used various profiles to send them unwanted explicit photos and messages. In its coverage of the case, the Courier described how Cowan also sent the victims images of a male avatar peeking through blinds and hiding in bushes, as if to convey that he enjoyed making them uncomfortable. It caused some of the women to worry that he was following them. After one victim blocked the troll, he reached out to a friend of hers and repeatedly asked him to tell her to unblock him. Another woman went on 4 dates with Cowan and later received explicit messages from 10 different phone numbers, whom she believed were all him, because the language and the nature of the comments were similar. Cowan even showed up at her workplace where her co-workers told him to leave her alone, and he continued contacting her to the point where she got a security alarm and surveillance cameras installed in her home. One of the women had pressed charges against the suspect in the past, but wound up back in court after a conviction failed to stop him from bothering her. During the investigation, officers visited Cowan's home and noticed that his bedding matched the bedding in the background of one of the explicit photos he sent. Despite this, he maintained that someone else sent the photos. His lawyer suggested that loneliness and boredom triggered his behavior, but the judge saw that as no excuse and sentenced him to 2 years in prison. Number 2. Irina Alexandra Restianu. During the summer of 2022, 22-year-old Irina Alexandra Restianu went on 2 dates with a man she met on a dating app. His name was Joseph Collins, and the two wound up having a one-night stand at a hotel near Warrington, England. When Collins told her that he couldn't see her for 3 weeks due to work commitments, she barraged him with 150 Snapchat messages in just 4 days, making it difficult for him to chat with others through the app. Collins called the police and asked them to issue Restianu a verbal warning to leave him alone, but it didn't stop her from calling his workplace and telling his co-workers that he was abusing narcotics, which turned out not to be true. She then threatened to call his past employers and tell the same lie. Restianu was arrested for stalking. In court, Collins said that he sank into a depression and wasn't his normal self. He struggled to focus at his job and lost his sense of humor while he grew increasingly worried about how bad the harassment would get. The traumatized young man eventually became consumed by the situation and said that it was all he could think about, making him feel even more powerless. He also worried that going to the police might make things worse. Collins was granted a restraining order and Restianu pleaded guilty to stalking. She was ordered to pay some fines and perform community service and was banned from contacting or going near the victim for 2 years. Her behavior left Collins feeling so traumatized that he deleted Snapchat and the dating app he met Restianu on. He told the court that it'll be a while before he'll be able to trust someone enough to get romantically involved. Number 1. Felonious flash mobs. In 2021, throngs of fast-moving thieves began conducting large-scale robberies of retail stores in California's Bay Area and several other parts of the US, including Chicago, Los Angeles, and Minneapolis. These groups, often numbering in the dozens, inflict heavy losses on stores, often to the tune of tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. This marked the first time law enforcement had ever observed the organization tactics that the groups used. Participants coordinated through social media and were often strangers. It made it difficult for investigators to track down suspects, since a lot of the time, people didn't know much about their fellow thieves and couldn't provide meaningful information. In many cases, just a handful of suspects, if any, are arrested. For example, just 3 people have been charged since 90 people stormed a Nordstrom store in the Bay Area in November of 2021, making off with more than $100,000 of merchandise in less than 1 minute. According to the Wall Street Journal, authorities identified Snapchat as one of the social media platforms that the planners of flash mob events use. A Snap spokesperson claimed that the company had investigated the claim but found no evidence of that type of activity, which would be considered a violation of the app's terms. A member of law enforcement officer told WSJ that flash mob organizers tend to prefer the disappearing message feature, which could be why the company found no signs of people using the app in violation of its terms of service. While things have somewhat quieted down since the 2021 spate of flash mob thefts, these crimes continue and are starting to happen in more places, and the use of social media to organize the crimes ahead of time is particularly troubling. Thanks for watching. Would you rather accidentally send a photo of yourself partying to one of your co-workers at a job with strict professionalism standards, or have a serial impersonator who relentlessly steals your social media content and pretends to be you? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.